Welcome back to the channel, everybody. In today's video, I have another episode of reacting to your guys' personal finances. Now, as always, this is not financial advice. This is just what I would do if I was in your financial situation. Now, if you want to be featured on a video like this in the future, feel free to email me. You will find it in the description down below. Just make sure you give me full consent to use your email in a video. Now, I got about 4 of these situations loaded up to go for you guys. So let's go ahead, sit back, relax, enjoy, and let's get into the first one. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's get into the first situation here. Now, I'll put the email on the screen for a quick second if you want to pause and read through it yourself. But all in all, I'll go ahead and walk you guys through this situation. So the person who emailed is 24 years old and they currently work a sales job where their income is around $90,000 to $100,000 a year before taxes. After take home is around $4,500 a month, and their fixed monthly expenses add up to around $3,300. They have around $22,000 in their 401k with 6% of their paycheck going into it to reach that 100% employer match. They have around $6,000 in a high yield savings and have a fully paid off car. The only debt this person has is $40,000 in student loans. The interest varies, but $20,000 of that 40 is in the 5 to 6.5 range, and the other 20 is in the 7 to 8% range. They currently pay around $500 a month towards that for a 10-year repayment plan. Now, here's the part where they really think they're messing up. They have spent/plan to spend around $9,000 this year on travel and experiences, 2 of that being international vacations, a few smaller trips, and some concerts and shows. And they have not gone into debt for any of this and cash flow all of it. And they know that the smart thing to do is to save their money and use it to pay off their loans quicker. However, they grew up not in the best situation, so they didn't really get a chance to travel, and that's what they want to use their money for. Now, they find it a little hard to balance the line of they want to have fun now and enjoy life, and I want to get ahead of the curve since this time right now, in your 20s is the most important financial advantage you'll ever have. So this is where they're kind of looking for advice. Where do you draw the line between fun and finances? What should I do with my extra money every month? Invest more or pay off my loans? And how would you rate my overall financial health? So let's go ahead, let's break it down. All right, so let's go ahead, let's help this guy out with this situation, answer his questions. But first things first, one more time, let's look at the facts. So we got a 24-year-old here making around $90,000 to $100,000 a year, fully paid off car, $22,000 sitting in the 401k, getting that full 6% employer match, $6,000 in their savings account, and the only debt is their student loans, which is around $40,000. But the max interest rate they're seeing on that is around 8% for about half of it. So overall financial health, I'm going to rate this like an A minus, B plus. Like, this is really good. The income level is amazing for a 24-year-old. This is way better than I was at when I was 24. And it sounds like most things are moving in the right direction. Now, the thing that they're calling out the most is the $9,000 this year of travel and experiences and kind of what they think about that and where I personally draw the line between fun and balancing your finances. And honestly, in this situation, when it comes to travel and experiences and things you care about, me personally, I don't really have a problem with this at all. There's a big difference between spending $9,000 this year on experiences that you know mean a lot to you while making $100,000 and also spending $9,000 because you're trying to impress people and you're putting it all on credit cards and you're financing everything, right? This situation, they specifically state they didn't finance any of this. You're not racking up consumer debt and you're intentionally spending money on things that you value. So I actually think that's a pretty good use of your money. While yes, $9,000 is a lot of money, it's something that's going to make your life better. Now, where you need to be careful, in my opinion, on balancing the two is the emergency fund. A $6,000 emergency fund, in my opinion, in your high yield savings account is a little light to me because your expenses right now are around $3,300 a month. So ideally, you're sitting on less than 2 months of fully funded expenses. So if I were you, the first thing I would do is not necessarily invest more or pay down your student loans. I would probably get that emergency fund closer to around $10,000 to $15,000 first, just so life can't punch me in the face when I'm least expecting it, in case anything goes wrong on your vacations, whatever it might be. you have more than 2 months sitting in your emergency fund to fall back on. Now, one thing that did also jump out to me is that he never mentioned anything about a Roth IRA or even a personal brokerage account. So it sounds like the only investing going on is through the 401k, which is fine for most people. But if you're eligible to open a Roth IRA or a taxable brokerage, I would absolutely be opening one because right now, you are getting the company match with your 401k, your money's working for you, which is great. After that, I'd rather have some money growing in a Roth IRA where it can start to grow tax-free for decades. And if you are able to open one and max that out, then I would highly look at opening a taxable brokerage account after that to get more money invested. Now, the student loan thing, you gotta have to be careful with it because, those rates aren't that low, right? 5 to 8% in debt is right in that gray area where there's kind of no perfect answer. So me personally, I would probably focus on doing both. I would 100% keep getting the 401k match because that's free money. You almost have to do that. After that, I would definitely start building an emergency fund, get that to around $10,000 to $15,000 to supplement the current lifestyle you're living. Worst case scenario, you lose your job, something goes wrong on vacation, you have extra money to fall back on. After that, I would start getting money flowing into a Roth IRA if that is possible, if you're eligible for it. And then I'd probably split the extra cash I have between investing further and paying down those loans because I don't think aggressively paying every penny towards a student loan is the answer here. You're 24, you make good money, you clearly value your experiences, because if you spend your entire 20s grinding and never doing anything fun with any of the money you earn, you're going to regret that. But if you spend your entire 20s traveling and ignoring investing, you're also going to regret that too. So unfortunately, the answer is kind of somewhere in the middle. Overall, I would say the financial health is probably a B+. It's not perfect, but it's super solid for a 24-year-old. And let's be honest, even my finances aren't perfect. Build the emergency fund up a little bit more, keep getting that 401k match, start funding a Roth IRA if eligible, slowly invest more money, and then kind of split that and start paying down those loans over time, kind of like you're doing. So the biggest takeaway here, for me is obviously at the end of the day, money is a tool for all of us. The goal is not to die with the biggest investment account possible. The goal is to use that money you've earned over time and build a life that not only you enjoy now, but you're going to enjoy in the future. So from what I'm reading, this guy, you're doing a pretty decent job of walking that line already. So build up that emergency fund, enjoy your travel, be safe, and yeah, I think you're doing great with your finances. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's hop into situation number 2 here, and the email goes as follows. I love your videos. I just wanted your opinion on buying a rental property versus keeping investing. I'm currently 24, thinking of buying a rental property in the near future. I'm painting a lot right now and currently working on a painting project, and by the end of the year, I will probably have near $110,000 in my brokerage account. I was wondering if I should let that money keep growing or if I should buy a rental property to take advantage of the cash flow and appreciation early on. Most of the houses I'm wanting to buy are between $250K in the worst areas and $450K in the nicer areas. All right, so hopping into this situation here. Now, this is a classic argument, right? Do you buy the rental property or do you keep your money invested? Now, for a 24-year-old, having $110,000 in your brokerage account is freaking amazing. Congratulations to you. I'm 26. I don't even have a net worth of $110,000, so you're off to a really great start. Now, the thing that kind of stands out to me is a lot of young investors almost see real estate as the automatic next step. Like, okay, I have this big investment account. I have to get into real estate now, right? That's just what everyone tells me. And I don't think that's necessarily always true or the right step for a lot of people because, right now with a brokerage account, with investment accounts, they should be completely passive, right? You put money in, it grows over time, and you don't get a phone call at 2 a.m. because you have a pissed off renter saying that the water heater exploded and now it falls into your lap. So a rental property can absolutely build wealth. You get appreciation, you get cash flow, you get leverage, you get some tax advantages, all the things real estate investors love talking about. But the one thing they always leave out is now you're a landlord. And conveniently, no one talks about being a landlord, especially if you're talking about buying properties in, the 250K range in potentially rougher areas. Sometimes those properties look amazing on paper until the first repair bill shows up or tenants stop paying or you have vacancy, whatever it might be. So if I'm in your shoes, I'm going to ask myself one really big question. Do I actually want to own a rental property or do I actually want to be a landlord? Or do I just want the returns a rental property can potentially provide me? Because those are two very different things. Now, look, I'm just going to be completely honest with you guys. If I was 24 and I had $110,000 already invested, I would probably keep investing unless I was genuinely passionate and excited about real estate. Because obviously, I'm not saying real estate is bad, but because what you're already doing in this situation is working for you. The other thing is if you buy a $350,000 property and put a big chunk of that $110,000 from your brokerage into a down payment, you lose a lot of that liquidity and that money becomes trapped inside the property. So for you, right, if you find an incredible deal on a property in a great area, you run the numbers, everything makes sense, and you truly want to be a landlord and get into the game of real estate, then sure, I could definitely see where taking the leap into real estate investing, having a rental property makes complete sense. But I would definitely not drain any or if at all of that money in that brokerage account just because I feel like I need to own real estate before I'm 25. So now what I would do, and this is just based off the knowledge I have from the post, maybe you've done all this already, etc., but I would tour properties, right? I would run deals, I would talk to landlords, I would understand repair costs, and I would probably spend the next 3, 6, 12 months really understanding what it takes to be a real estate investor, what it takes to be a landlord if I truly want renters. Now, once again, maybe you've done all that already and you really want to hop into real estate, then go for it. But if you haven't done all those necessary educational steps, you would absolutely need to do that before getting into real estate. So overall, if I had to choose right now with the information given in the post, me personally, I'd probably stick with investing. Not because real estate is a bad investment or anything like that, but because you're already winning. For a 24-year-old, you are already in a great position. And sometimes a lot of people can get themselves into trouble by trying to fix something that's not already broken. So the biggest takeaway for me here is you don't need to own every asset class to become wealthy or to be winning. Sometimes the best investment strategy is simply doing what you've already been doing and what's working for you. So once again, do the research on real estate. Make sure it's something you absolutely want to do. And if it is, go for it. But if you haven't done the research already, spend a few months, couple months truly understanding it before taking the deep dive because you're already in a really good situation. All right, so getting into situation number 3 here, this goes as follows. I'm 19 years old and work as a security system installer, making $28 an hour plus overtime. I make between $4,000 and $4,400 a month after taxes. I started contributing to a 401k at a 10% rate. I get a 3% employer match, so this adds up to 13% of my pre-tax income. My current balance is just below $600. I have another investment account worth just under $350 that I put a little bit of money into about a year and a half ago. I have high yield savings with about $6,000 in it and a checking account with about $4,700 in it. I also have a 2016 Lexus RC300 worth about $20,000 that I owe $100 on, and I plan to make tiny payments on that balance for the rest of the loan term, just under 4 years, to boost my credit score, currently 748 without paying all of the interest. I have no other debt and do not have a credit card. My only expenses are food, car insurance, a $2 car payment, gas, and my girlfriend. All of this together is about $1,000, leaving me with $300 to $3,400 a month. My financial plan for the medium term is to continue the 10% contribution to my 401k while putting some money into investments and the majority into my savings. These savings will be used for the down payment on a house in the next couple of years. Me and my 3 friends are going to split the cost of this house through an LLC with a contractual obligation to stop there from being any problems. That said, I will make sure it's a house I'd be able to afford on my own if all were to jump ship. If you have any advice as to what I should do with my money or changes I should make to my plan, I look forward to seeing it in a video soon. All right, so would I change anything to this situation? Now, once again, let's look at the facts. You are 19 years old, making around $4,000 to $4,400 a month after taxes. You're already contributing 10% to your 401k. You're getting your 3% employer match. You have over $10,000 sitting between checking and savings. You already have a basically paid off car, 748 credit score, and practically no debt. So first things first, you're killing it for 19. I don't know if my viewers are just cracked or something. Now, the first thing that jumps out to me is the amount of cash flow that this 19-year-old has, right? He's bringing home $4,000 to $4,400 a month and only spending around $1,000 of that, which means he's got roughly $3,000 left over every single month for investing, saving, spending. That's a huge advantage. So personally, segueing off of that, I would keep the 401k exactly where it's at, right? 10% with a 3% match at 19 years old is awesome. I don't think you need to increase that at all right now. The one thing I did notice though is he mentioned a 401k and then quote a smaller investment account, but never mentioned anything about a Roth IRA or a taxable brokerage. So if you're eligible, once again, I would absolutely sign up for a Roth IRA or start using that small investment account to your advantage. Maybe start investing into some ETFs or some index funds and get some more money working for you, because at 19, getting money into a Roth IRA or just a smaller investment account is incredibly powerful, because that money's going to grow tax-free, assuming it's a Roth IRA, for the next 40 plus years. Now let's go ahead, let's talk about the car, because personally, dude, this is the one thing I don't necessarily agree with. You mentioned that you owe $100 on a Lexus and you plan on making $2 payments for the next 4 years to try and boost your credit. Honestly, I don't think this is going to do much for you. You already have a great credit score for a 19-year-old. You're already winning. Plus, if the goal is to eventually buy a house, lenders care way more about that tiny car loan staying open, right? They care about your income, your payment history. I would just pay the car off and move on. I would rather see him open like a basic, student credit card or something of that nature, use it responsibly, pay it off every month and build credit that way than keeping that auto loan open, because dragging out a $100 balance for years just to potentially squeeze out a few credit score points doesn't really move the needle for me when it comes to your finances. Now, for the house idea, in my opinion too, you got to be a little cautious with this. And I know you said you'd have a contractual agreement with your buddies, which I do think is a good mindset. As buying a house with 3 friends, it always sounds great because everyone gets along. Everyone has a job, everyone's excited, everyone has a plan, but life can change really fast in your 20s. So I actually love, once again, that you said you would only look for a house that you could afford on your own. That is the exact same way I would personally approach it, because if the entire deal only works because these 3 friends are helping covering the payment, I would be extremely nervous about that. So I like that mindset that you're going with. So if I were you, my biggest goal over the next couple of years would be simple. Keep stacking cash, keep investing, and let that cash flow advantage really do its thing over time. So personally, overall, I really wouldn't make any major changes to this financial plan. Keep that 401k going, open a Roth IRA if eligible, start investing in some index funds, pay off that remaining car balance of $100, continue building towards that house fund, and then maybe every few months or so, audit your buddies, do a temperature check, make sure that they're still on the same page as you when it comes to buying a house and your goals kind of align. But overall, for a 19-year-old, this person's doing amazing. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's get into the last situation here. And the email reads as follows. I'm 17 years old and a couple months away from turning 18. I live in Spain, so I don't have a Roth or 401k, only a worse version of the 401k. I have euros, so I'll multiply the money to reflect value in dollars. And I live with family, so I don't have to worry about common expenses. I currently have around $2,300, and I plan to keep studying, but I have a summer job offer for around $1,700. Adding the money earned from summer to the previous amount makes around $7,500. I'm aware that's a lot of money for my age, so I will invest it. I'm a little bit lost on where to put the money because the S&P 500 costs a lot more than before right now, and maybe it's better to put money in another indexed fund. I know I shouldn't have to panic over these types of things, but I really don't know what to do, and I want to hear your thoughts. So let's go ahead, let's break this down. All right, so this email comes in from Spain. Let me know in the comments down below where you're from. But look, he's 17 years old, living at home, about to have a summer job. He's going to have $7,500 after everything, and he's already thinking about investing in index funds. For a 17-year-old, you're doing fantastic. Now, the thing that stood out to me immediately was when he said the S&P 500 costs a lot more than before. And honestly, that's not really the way you should be looking at the S&P 500, because the S&P 500 being higher today than it was a few years ago doesn't automatically mean it's expensive, right? If that logic worked, no one would have bought the S&P in 2010, 2015, 2020, because every single day it was hitting new all-time highs. And honestly, this is one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of new and or young investors make, because they spend so much time trying to figure out if now is the perfect time to invest and if the S&P 500 is priced properly, and then they never actually get their money invested. Now, the one thing I do agree with is you should not put all your money into one single stock. For a young person, at 17 years old, you don't need to pick any type of winners. If I was 17 years old and I had no bills, no debt, and years before I really needed to touch this money, I would make my goal to make my life as simple as possible. I'd be looking at broad market index funds, whether it's the S&P 500 or a world index fund or some combination of the two, because the goal right now is not to get rich or to, 10x your money next year, right? The goal is to start building that, habit of investing and let all the time you have in front of you do the heavy lifting. And honestly, I wouldn't even invest 100% of your money, right? I know you said that's kind of the plan, but I would probably keep a small amount of cash around, maybe a few $100s, just because you never know when life happens, or you might want to treat yourself to something. And having some liquidity is never a bad thing with your finances. And the other thing I do love about this post is that you're getting the summer job, right? Because at 17, your biggest wealth building tool will never be your stock market portfolio or your real estate investing, because you're 17 years old. It's your ability to actually go out into the world and earn money. And the difference between a good investor and a great investor at this age will never be the returns. You haven't had enough time for your money to actually return you decent amounts. It's how much you can earn and then save and invest. So overall, I think for 17 years old, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I think you're overthinking it just a little bit. Don't worry about what the price of the S&P is. Don't worry if it's too expensive or anything like that. Just pick a diversified index fund like the S&P, like a world fund. Start investing consistently. Keep a little cash on the side for yourself and focus on growing your income and pretty much just learning about finances along the way. So at 17 years old, you do not need a perfect investment strategy. You just need to avoid major mistakes. And it sounds like with the mindset you have, you'll be very good at doing that. So keep it up. Great work. All right, so that wraps up this episode of reacting to your guys' personal finances. Once again, if you want to get featured on a video like this, check the description down below, send me an email, give me consent to use it in a video, and I will get around to this. I plan to make more videos like this, so if I didn't get to your email, I apologize. I got a whole bunch of them, so I'll try to kind of, work through them. But overall, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you would do for these different situations, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.